Hey, this is Doug Fields, CEO of the Institute for Healthcare Consumerism, joined along with my co-host Brent Macy, Managing Director, and welcome back to the segment Healthcare Consumerism Radio, which we continue the discussion on private exchanges. And joining us to kind of lead this discussion is Jake Biscoglio, VP of Private Exchange Business for Cigna. Jake, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, great to have you on the program. I really appreciate you taking time to join us today.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, give our audience kind of background on where Cigna, what Cigna's doing in this space right now with private exchanges.
Sure. So at Cigna, we see great opportunity for private exchanges, both from an active employee perspective as well as on the retiree side of the equation as well. And we are taking many steps into this emerging space. One with our own proprietary exchange, which we call Cigna Solution, as well as participating in many broker consultant exchanges on the active side, as well as on the retiree side, and offering our medical plans as well as our broad ancillary products, dental, vision, life, accident, disability, et cetera.
So the complete Cigna product line is in your exchange right now?
Both our exchange as well as the broker consultant exchanges that we participate on as well.
What do you see, you're excited about this space, you're focused on this space moving forward. What do you see the most confusion in this space right now?
I think the most confusion comes in that there are many different types of exchanges, and we like to say, and many as well in the industry say, you've seen one exchange, you've seen one exchange. So a lot of activity in this space, a lot of different types of exchanges, all with commonalities, but also taking a different approach to it. And I think from an employer perspective, from a carrier perspective, and ultimately from a customer perspective, sorting it all out is really important. So I think that's where the most confusion is. As with any emerging products or capabilities in the market, you tend to see that.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of a sorting out period, and I think we're in that period right now.
Jake, you were, you led the development and launch for the audience that knows around Cigna's consumer-driven products. And when you look at exchanges, I mean, you see all the surveys out there, everything out there about, the explosion expected among HSAs. Do you see the same happening across the space?
It seems very similar to, going back probably more than 10 years ago now, and what we saw in the consumer-driven health space. I think there's a lot of prognostications around rapid growth in private exchanges. I think the market is still very nascent, and we're seeing interest, a lot of interest, I would say. However, the adoption curve will take some time. I think that's really predicated on ultimately the value that is delivered versus the promises that are being made through the exchanges. So it does feel similar. We believe at Cigna there will be strong growth in the space. The question becomes ultimately, what does that adoption curve ultimately look like, and how rapid does the growth occur?
Jake, this is Brent. When you go talk to employers out there in the marketplace and/or brokers, what are 1-2 things that they need to really look at when considering moving into a private exchange, employers specifically right now?
Yeah, I think from the employer side, it's really about understanding what are their objectives. Are they interested in an exchange because it's viewed as a vehicle to deliver more choice for their employees and the employees' family members, and ultimately getting them into the right plan that's best for them? Another consideration is from an administrative perspective for the employer, as they view this as a way to not only get more choice for their employees, but also to drive to a simpler administrative relationship with the carrier or their broker. I think that's another consideration as well. It's very important, and something we make sure that the employer is thinking about is ultimately the value, and really taking a long-term view of this as opposed to maybe just sort of a shorter-term approach, which is about maybe introducing more choice with an objective of getting at cost. And trying to drive costs through buy-downs. I think there's a longer-term play, an opportunity to not only do that, but also get at better consumer engagement and overall, improvements around health and productivity.
Is there we have a very complex system the way it is right now, Jake. So from an employer and their employee standpoint, do exchanges help simplify, or do they add to the complexity of this already complex system?
Yeah, good question. I think there is a opportunity to drive simplicity done right. And by that I mean if you introduce more choice, and in many cases employers are offering more choice to their employees of medical plans, so instead of having maybe 2 plans to choose from, they can have anywhere from 6 to 7, some instances more. That leads to additional complexity, where the opportunity comes for the private exchange administrator is how do you take that complexity, put the right tools, the right communication, simplify the language so it's understandable, so that complexity ultimately gets simplified. And I think that's one of the key opportunities that is there from a private exchange perspective, and certainly an area that Cigna is very focused on. How do we take the potential for complexity and really simplify it?
Now, Jake, looking at...
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, now looking at let's say you're looking at your current book of business right now, and you look at the people the employers that have adopted, let's say, the high deductible type plans and went full replacement with those plans as the only option. Are you seeing that employer more interested in the exchange, or are you seeing employers who maybe aren't even at a full replacement, still offer plans of choice, taking the jump to look aggressively at the exchange option?
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag right now. Certainly the employer who hasn't gone into a consumer-driven product offering, either full replacement or, encouraging people there, that may be a step before they move to a private exchange. So one of the things we like to do is, really have a conversation with the employer to step back and say, okay, where are you now? Why haven't you, if you haven't introduced a consumer-driven plan more aggressively, why haven't you done that? Is there something holding you back? And maybe the answer isn't that private exchanges is right yet, but maybe that's something that's down the line. Or the private exchange may create that opportunity to move that employer to consumer-driven plans that hasn't been there yet, because they see the value of more choice, get people to the right plan, give them the tools that help them get to that right plan. So it's really a multifaceted discussion, really centered on what are the needs of that employer, their population, and then how do you fit the right solution to it.
Jake, do you see across your customer and prospect base, and even through the brokers that you support and others, do you see any specific sectors and size of employers moving more aggressively than others?
So we've seen interest really across the board, and it's too early to call a trend. I think where you've seen the most adoption, however, has been on the larger side of the employer side. So, what we would define as national accounts, the bigger jumbo clients with a more geographically dispersed workforce. That's where we've seen the adoption thus far. Part of that is just in terms of the market and where the larger consulting firms who, in many ways were first to market have focused.
Right.
But, as we've launched our proprietary exchange Cigna solutions, we've seen interest really across the board, and expect that interest level will continue to grow, and really don't see it as something that's going to be limited to a size of employer at this point.
Yeah, we kind of see the same thing. In talks with a lot of the mid-sized employers that I classify as 250 to 3,000 employees, we see that large group actually the ones sitting on the fence that I think are going to move pretty aggressively when they start seeing continued good results come out from their peers and others in the space. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's really, you said it at the end, it's about results.
Yeah.
So there are, again, a lot of opportunity, a lot of promise with exchanges across the board. The key, I think, is going to be value, and how does that value come through for the plan sponsor, but also for the individual customer or the employee of that employer, and helping them to achieve the goals they're looking for.
Now, Jake, when
That's the opportunity.
When you talk about the employers there, what's the flexibility that they have when they go into these exchanges? Is it increased flexibility, or are they limited in what they can do by making this move in some ways?
Yeah, again, so I think everything really depends on which exchange. So, from the Cigna's exchange, we create a set of plans both on the medical side and ancillary from which the employer can choose. So there's some element of a stable plan offering there, a set of plans, but we've also introduced some flexibility to make sure that the client is able to match existing plan or plans that they have, and then introduce some additional plan choices. So we want to make sure that we're providing the flexibility that's needed in the market, but also creating some standardization, because that's important in terms of efficiency around plan administration. And the broker or third-party exchanges, there is a mixed bag. Some are very standard in terms of, you we're only going to offer 5 plans. Others are looking for 20 plans. Really depends. And I think that's one of the things that's an interesting area to watch, is to see how that morphs over time. Does it get to more flexibility, or does it stay more standardized? I think that's an open question still.
Jake, listen, we time flies when we're having fun here, and this has been a really great conversation. I look forward to continuing it. You got about a minute, and I want to give you a chance to kind of wrap this and leave our audience with some takeaway thoughts from you.
Yeah, thank you, and again, appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I think with the private exchange business, it's very much an evolving space. It's important for employers to really step back and think about what are the drivers for why a private exchange might be a good solution for them and their employees, and ultimately to make sure they're thinking both short term and longer term in terms of where this ultimately goes. I think the key thing there is how does that value ultimately manifest itself for the plan sponsor, for their employees, and ultimately how is that aligned with their strategy.
Jake, thanks so much. I hope you can join us out west at IHC Forum and continue this discussion, but really appreciated your time today and this discussion. You have a great weekend. And to the rest of our audience, stay tuned for the next segment, Healthcare Consumerism Radio.